Hello.
PR Connections Radio presents.
That was interesting. All right. It's not your fault or mine, but together, you and I and Lori Simonovic, we can do something about it. Stay tuned. Voices of humanity, we need to hear your voices. We need to hear your voices. Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Sandra McKechnie here. Hey, Lori.
Hi.
Welcome to Voices of Humanity at prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. I am your host, Sandra McKechnie, and this is my guest, Lori Simonovic. This, I think, is our fifth show, I think. Something like that. But today you're in for some more contents and just yummy stuff. It's hard. This show is really about getting uncomfortable. And you and I both know. I think, Laura, you had given that analogy of someone giving birth, right? Something like that, where they're like, it's crowning, it's here. I haven't given birth, okay? But I am telling you, I was there when a friend of mine was giving birth, and I was like, wow, it's like a truck coming through there. But anyway, I couldn't even believe it. I think I was traumatized. But she did it, and millions of women do. But the discomfort, I'm telling you, is well worth it. It usually is well worth it. So we're going to go there today, and we're going to have a wonderful, really good show. I have grown so much meeting Lori, and I know she's going to say the same. We have been able to do a lot with this work and equity work, anti-bias, anti-oppressive work, and it is hard work. And so at this point, I want to welcome you again. Thank you for being here. Please subscribe. We want other people to get the content. And you know how or maybe you don't, but the algorithm has its mind about things. And your likes, your shares, your comments, subscribing makes a big difference. We so appreciate it. Not your fault or mine, but together we can certainly do something about it. Lori, and we're going to start. I'm not going to read Lori's bio again, but she's got a great bio, but I'm going to have her actually just tell you a bit about herself. And of course, when we shoot this out, I will put the links for you. So Lori, this woman's got bodies of work. She's done hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours probably of research, incredible amount of hours. And so we are dealing with the content that we're dealing with is actually her research. And it's a lot of what I do. And in case you don't know, double consciousness, 2Ds, which means two streams of thought, two social identities. The gap in between is the struggle. And it has a lot to do with those that show up after hundreds of years later, sub-Saharan trade, transatlantic slave trade, apartheid, colonization, imperialism, and all of that, the ma'afas. So you've come through the time warp, right? Say 1600s, way before that, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Here we are in the 21st century, and why people show up, how they show up, and what that really looks like. So we're going to get into intersections of that today. Lori, why do you love doing this work? And how did you get here to this point doing this work, even here on the show today?
Okay, why do I... ask me the question again.
I was going to say, why are you so passionate about this work? If you read her work, you need to have an answer for that, because that's powerful work. And it's so much I connect with it so much because it's also the work that I do on most parts of it. So I just wanted you to let the people know, why are you so passionate about it? What brought you there and what brought you here today, even on this show?
As I've mentioned, I think in the first podcast, I come from a fairly politicized family. My parents escaped, that's my understanding, the former Yugoslavia. And so a lot of social justice and injustice and so on was talked about a lot at the table. I myself have experienced various forms of violence and trauma. And I learned from that, and I didn't want to be that. I'm not suggesting when I experienced that, for example, in grade 7 and 8, the entire grade 7 and 8, there was a combination of ethnocentrics of me being different, but I was bullied. So
Mm.
during that time, I remember just being lost, like my innocence was being lost. I didn't really understand it. And I made a decision at a very early age that I wanted things to be better. And
Hmm.
what that looked like, better is not even, it's not the proper word. I didn't want to hurt others the way that I was hurt. So that's a piece of it. But I was also, I learned stuff from my own father's experience with systemic and individual discrimination, and my perception of how he might have handled that differently. And he, while he was still alive, near the end of his life, said that he was part of the problem, and that's the discomfort, the doing your own work piece,
Hmm.
because we're all part of the process, right?
For
And
sure. For
it
sure.
got to the point where he apologized for some of the mistakes he made. Um, and then as I started to move into intersections, I remember that in her book, the Revolution Within, Gloria Steinem said that she was trying to unpack uh, why she was in this one particular relationship with an African American man, and her
Hmm.
analysis was that because she had experienced her own oppression, although it's a bridge, I don't think she was saying that she understands what it's like to be Black, but she was saying that connection and oppression. So I kind of have eyes for um, uh, what is systemic and individual discomfort is like, or oppression. I don't want to call mine oppression. I have to unpack that still, right?
Well,
So
that's fair. Thank you for saying that.
yeah, so yeah. And then as I got introduced and learned from new people who were similar to my parents, who were trying to make a difference, my brothers, and I got deeper and deeper and just wanted to make, so my entire career has been dedicated to moving towards freedom for all of us.
Wonderful. Yay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does, because it speaks to the fact that I don't think you just can go into a country and, bring a pastor, build a church and a school, and because of your works, you can identify on some level with oppression. I think it takes sometimes going through some stuff, probably most times, for people.
Yeah.
Right. And we have something in the other show, I don't know what show it was in, it was called Getting It, and we'll bring it back, and I mean, we allude to it from time to time. What does it mean for me to get it? An Indigenous person says, teaching me something or sharing something with me, and I'm like, oh, I get it, what that looks like. So we'll touch on those things again. How long does it take to get it? A lifetime, probably, to really appreciate those that have been pushed, into the margins, those that are so-called marginalized, to really get it, myself, just because I know my people, and of course everybody does. We were classified by some pseudoscientists at the bottom of the rung in terms of classification of races, which we know is nonsense, right? But that was the classification. So it is, I'm aware of it, but then my Indigenous brothers and sisters, sympathetic in some areas for sure, but I also appreciate that I don't get it. There's a lot there I don't get, and I need that teaching. So I wanted to hear from you about that. And right now, when it comes to, and I heard your story, I love that. So when it comes to you, like people might say, she's a white woman now, she's going to be here, she's going to take up space, and she won't drop the mic, she just won't leave the microphone, she's got to be on the stage. Like, how do you feel about that because I know that's something you fight against, I'm sure, because I don't get it from you. I get it. You let me to talk so much on the show. People might be like, you're talking too much, let the guest talk. But
Yeah, it's from my perspective, right?
Yes. So how do you feel about that? Is it difficult for you to hear that you're taking up space in the room? Or because I asked you that because I'm reading your work, and there was a part where I'm paraphrasing where it says you have no problem with somebody telling you this is not the space for you, or you're not to be in this space, a Black person say, right? Mm-hmm. Which I really appreciate that, because it's happened, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So your question is, how do I feel about taking space or not taking space?
Or not both? How do you feel? Is it something that bothers you or you're good?
Oh, no, it doesn't bother me. No, I know it's part of the work, but it's uncomfortable work because it's not so much do I fit or I don't fit. I think that's a Eurocentric construct about fit. I think it's alive, right? So something
Mm,
might want you and growing or dying at the same time, right? So we trigger each other. We everything's going well, but then it's not going well. So like if you're talking specifically in it really depends on the context. So, for example, in one of the things that I was told by a psychiatric survivor leader when I was defined as being very helpful, but I noticed that there was kind of this messy. People wanted me there, but they didn't want me there. I wasn't really getting it. And she said to me that there's an uncomfortable relationship when she said, you have a job. You're one of the few people, even though I was fighting for people to get paid. And I was working with all different stakeholders and that kind of thing. But the fact is that people would rather run their own lives. People would rather not be oppressed. And so I was as a community mental health consultant at the time, yeah, they want my help. You're a nice person, but I'd rather do it on my own, or I'd rather do it on our own, meaning their own, right?
mhm,
So there's this ambivalent relationship sometimes when a so-called ally or helper comes in. And no matter how well you learn to work to share power, you belong and you don't all the time in some
mhm,
context, if that makes any
mhm,
sense.
mhm, mhm.
So
So, so, so sometimes do you feel you belong and you don't?
I just take it as a data point. I don't
Oh,
take it personally, right?
okay, that's great.
In
That's
that
great.
context, I belong and I don't.
Okay, I didn't know if you were referring to the people you may go to have, offer your services to, or do they feel that they belong, or yourself in that context?
Oh, I'm talking specifically about my role. That's what I thought you
Right.
were talking,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And not about taking up space. Now, sometimes I'm told that I don't take up enough space, and other times I've been told that I took up too much space. And so it's a constant learning curve.
Oh, I think that toggling is good. I think that at least you're erring on the side of, hey, because I remember I went to this indigenous training and I thought I knew something, but the gentleman was nice enough to be like, listen, that's how the Eurocentric construct has designed that way of thinking. That is not how my people think. And I had to take that. I kind of pushed back and pushed back. I'm thinking, who do I think I am? So today,
That's
so I had to, in a way, do that just because I feel, my people went through something that I really get, what he's saying. No,
yeah.
so it's interesting, very similar.
I just today I was just thinking about it because you wanted to talk about discomfort. Did you want another story? Or do you want to go somewhere else?
Oh no, let's get uncomfortable.
Okay. I remember this very uncomfortable moment. Um, so I had done a lot of deep work and that kind of thing. And my tendency is like, we're all in this together. It's not really kumbaya, but just a little bit before sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that everything's okay, right? So I was in this situation, and rankism is a big thing in institutions where, um, there's people that are on top and people on the bottom, and I'm coming as an equal, right? So I was in this situation where the executive secretary, I think that was her title, in this small department, and she had all these people coming at her, and I was one of them. And we were allowed to ask her. It didn't have to go through the manager. And I thought, a pretty good relationship with her. And then there was a situation where somebody was getting really upset. I usually get stuff done really fast, but I didn't want to be the one telling her it needs to get done faster. So I was feeling uptight internally, but I wasn't aware of it. Anyway, so I said, if you can't, it's okay. But do you think it's possible? Because I knew I wasn't her manager, and it's not my place to sort of even gently cajole her in any way. And she got really upset with me. And I said, like, what have I done? And I said, it's okay if you can't do it. And she told me that it was, she picked up, and I thought I was covering it up, on how tense I was. And that she took that as a form of pressure, almost oppression, right? And I said, oh my gosh, I am truly sorry. So I said, what I'm going to do from now on, because I can see, like, because I know how that feels for me. I thought I was doing the right, but I was coming from my head. I wasn't really coming from a place of peace when I went to ask her, because the environment at that point was extremely tense for some reasons. And so I told her I would remain mindful. Before I come to her, I would breathe, I would do some self-talk, and that I would work on that.
So were you feeling stressed and that was sort of stressing her out? Is that what it?
No, I wasn't, as far as I was aware, I wasn't stressing her out. I
Oh,
wasn't telling her what to do.
right.
I said, because I was so tense about it, that tenseness was really impacting her. It made it feel like, because in her view, I was above rank, right? Above her rank.
Oh, so she probably took it to mean that, whoa, something, what,
Like, oh, there was a combination of, who do you think you are? She's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Because I'm not her boss, but the boss is saying, no, ask her, right? So I wasn't going to go to the boss. I wanted us to work it out together. And even the term boss is so silly, but anyway. So I went off and I did some work, and I really worked on building the relationship in different small ways without overdoing it. And then I waited a while before I went for anything else. And when I did go back, I was much calmer, and the relationship started to change. Nothing was said, but even the way that I was coming off, I was not taking into consideration my rank. That she perceived that I was many ranks above her. I don't even believe in that notion. But
she's a Black woman?
No, she was a woman that self-identified as an immigrant, didn't have her papers yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a lot going on, right?
Oh, wow. So she might have found that a little intimidating, maybe, or?
I don't know. I didn't ask her, because I didn't have enough intimacy with her. We got to know each other later, a lot later. We were laughing together, and but that took a long time to build up, right?
Okay, so Miss Laurie, you know what we're going to do? We're going to dive in.
Okay.
Okay, this is from Laurie's work, Get Uncomfortable. And I know that people that have subscribed have been to the trainings that I do, Double Consciousness Fundamentals, Double Consciousness Advanced. Fantastic opportunity. It's changed my life. I didn't coin that term, double consciousness. It was W.E.B. Du Bois that did. And even then, it was around before him. But he took it and ran with it. And it's a very controversial gentleman, but this double consciousness, two streams of thought, two social identities, is something amazing. It doesn't have to do with a split personality, but it does have to do with those that are African American, African Canadian, say, and then they have to reconcile that, all that happened with that, to wherever the ships took them in the new world. So it is very interesting. Get uncomfortable. Admit to myself and all people that I work with and do not work with to challenge my own sensibilities and recognize that every white person is a part of the large project of systemic racism and whiteness. We all benefit whether we see it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not. So, disclaimer, in a sense, I'm gonna put it out there, Laurie, sort of like, we know Black and white and the race and all of the bywords and the whole, that's all constructed and it's false, right? It doesn't make any sense. We were human beings. Up on all of this is constructed with a Eurocentric mentality, and it has its purpose. There's a gentleman by the name of Albert Pike. Oh my goodness, he's worth looking into. It's amazing how far back this thing goes. So when we look at the plan for these people are important people that they were dehumanized at the bottom of the rung. Who are these people? So who are these Black people? Byword. But what was I saying? What was I talking about? I digressed.
You read the quote as a white person that I have to unpack my stuff, and then you started getting into some examples.
Okay, so yeah, I did this last week, and then it came back, I think. So it'll come back again.
Sorry.
But And so what I really wanted to say was all of this language we're using, and you might get tired of it sometimes I do too, but so that we're on the same page for all intents and purposes, it's important for us to know, what are we saying, what are we talking about here? Because at one point we were just people, and we were together, there were nations of two nations of people. Say, I double consciousness on my logo, I have two lions, one brown one and one and that just sort of, it sort of typifies the war within, really. So when we break it down, what is the issue? Because anybody with fair skin was classified under the umbrella of whiteness.
Mm-hmm.
After 1681, and some dispute that the year of that. But a lady by the name of Jacqueline Badalora, who wrote the book Birth of a White Nation, found nothing. The term white wasn't there when she was doing her research. So whiteness definitely is constructed. It means pure. It means all of that. It's power. It's all of these things. The white angel on top of the pagan Christmas tree. I'm just saying. I'm just putting it out there.
The white Christ.
Yes, the white Christ with the blue eyes, a brunette sometimes. But at any rate, we can't put those things aside and go in and see what we're really looking at, and that's when the discomfort starts. Because so if you don't want to talk about whiteness and racism and systemic racism and anti-bias, so let's look at the reality of what happens, and when it makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you can identify with it a little bit more. So that's what we're endeavoring to do today, is to get a little uncomfortable. So Lori, and the next point says, this is heart and gut wrenching work, and if I do not take it that seriously, I must leave this work. That is so powerful.
Thank you.
Why would you say that?
I'm only speaking for myself.
Okay.
Right? Not for anybody else. That's why I purposely said I.
Okay.
If somebody agrees, that's fine. But for me, it's authenticity is so not in the Eurocentric context. Authenticity is not taken seriously. So, for example, when I've worked in academic settings and I'm facilitating courses, and I need evidence, and the evidence is usually European evidence or North American evidence or Canadian evidence, whatever that means, right? So, and that usually means Eurocentric, kind of within the white construct. I'm not saying it's all, because it's never, the so-called other has never gone away. And why would I say that? Because I want to be as authentic as possible, right? And I want to, make some small difference. And if I'm not deeply authentic, because I'm so hypnotized and memorized all the rules. Like I remember speaking to a woman, again, way above my rank where I was working, and she told me something that she did with somebody above her rank. And and we were very close friends, so I could say that. And I said, won't you be considered insubordinate? And she just started laughing. And she knows that she would, but she taught me, you have to resist when this kind of oppression happens. So even those kind of moments in terms of the authenticity, I was authentically worried for her, but I was imposing a Eurocentric worldview. She was teaching me something and I wasn't getting it. So I just want to get to deeper and deeper places to getting it.
And how you connect that to when you said every white person recognize, challenge my own, again, it's you, my own sensibilities, and recognize that every white person is a part of the large project of systemic racism and whiteness. What does that look like for you?
Well, I mean, it's like Peggy McIntosh's article. She has 52 lists. It's just one tiny exercise. It's like super intro. The privileges that I have, I'm not going to be followed in a store. I'm probably not going to be pulled over because I'm white. I'm not, there's so many things that I don't have to worry about. That's all privilege. I'm not going to, when people see me alone, but I come with, yeah, you can have that apartment. And a white woman will say to me, like, this has actually happened about 20 years ago. She said, we don't really want Blacks here. I said, are you for real? Right. And so then I have to make a decision whether I'm going to stay in that apartment or not. Right. And what am I supporting? I'm part of that system. I'm benefiting getting that apartment because I'm white. And I know that in that moment. And there's dozens of examples like that. Is that what you're asking?
Oh, definitely. Because this work is really dense and philosophical, and it's amazing work. And I was saying to Laura, we got to mix it up a little bit with so that not to water it down in any way, but we want to also have connectivity with you when you're watching. So I love that what you just shared there, because I was thinking of our stories help to break down this work and make it palatable so that you can, okay, I get it. I kind of get this a little bit, even if it's just a little bit. You think, okay, I can understand with my head now, even if it's not just permeating and saturating, but you can maybe understand with your head. Because when you mentioned that, I was thinking of years ago. I'd given this story when a friend of mine went to purchase a home, late 20th century, right? And she could hear the real estate, the man that she wanted to purchase, that she went with her husband, the man she wanted to purchase the home from, she could hear him in the kitchen talking to the woman saying, I don't sell to niggers. Oh. And when we, even though through your life, it's a wonder. And if it was you that had gone through what this group of people have gone through, of which I'm a part, I'm talking to the audience here, you would understand how, and I'm sure you still, because there's a lot of suffering that people can identify with, regardless of whether you have gone through years of this. You start to file things almost, whoa, that can't be real. Dissonance. And it leads to a consistent internalized oppressed self, right? So when I think of that story, and I think of when I went to sing at this wonderful place, we had talked about that before, and I showed up to sing, and I have my locks going in, and I went in with a friend of mine that I would sing with. She's white, presenters, I was white, and here I went up and I said, here, I'm here to sing this place, very elitist looking. And the woman looked at me and she went, no, I don't think so. And eventually it came out that, I must have misunderstood or whatever. She had to look into it. And I went to the table because it was a lovely place to have a brunch in, and I was supposed to be singing the next month. And my friend was singing that month. Well, my friend came and she plopped herself down in front of me because I was insisting to the lady that I was, and she was somehow trying to get out of that. And I sat down thinking, and I got so emotional going, no, I'm not going to use the card. I'm not going to use the card. It starts with an R and ends with an E. I'm not going to use that card, that race card. And my friend sat down in front of me and she said, oh my God, I think she's prejudiced, this white woman in front of me. And it caused me to actually feel better, even though I was in pain. I felt, oh my gosh, it wasn't me. It's not that I'm tripping. So when these things happen, so when this question, I love this work for this, challenge my own sensibilities, okay? And recognize that every white person is a part of the large project of systemic racism and whiteness. There's ways in which, and I know intentionally, I know that woman would have actually said, I never said anything. Like I didn't call her a name, or I didn't say anything that was, because intent does not equate to your multi-generation and intergenerational influence that has been passed to you.
Yeah.
Right? What'd you say, Lori?
Sorry, I kind of interrupted.
No, go ahead. Interruptions are good for the show. I told you that.
You're saying it's not. Thank you. It's not just intent, which is what you just described in another way. It's the impact, and you're saying it's very deeply rooted within. And looking at that is very painful work.
Yes, I totally. And seriously, because I've been assimilated to be like you, who are called white, I was assimilated to be like you. So this is where we get to know each other, because right. I thought my two streams of thought, two social identities, authentic me, African, Caribbean, which really I'm not. We go much further back than that. And then to reconcile that with coming to Canada, which is great. We all want our children to fit in and all that. But when I look at what was given to me. When I walked into a room one day and a baby came in, and I do this little thing. I've got this little book. I'm trying to get it together. It's called "Is There Something on My Face?"
Mm.
And this baby was rolled into the room, Lori. And I'd known her mother. I knew her first child. This is a white woman, and I knew her child, white little boy, and very lovely people. The baby saw me for the first time, and the child started to cry like viscerally. And I'm looking, going, and I literally, with this innocence, I looked at her, the mom who I'd known for years, and I went, is there something on my face?
Yeah.
And later, and mom said to me, "Oh, I didn't at that time. I wasn't thinking of this." And the mom said to me, "Oh, child's not socialized to being with Black people." And I did that. I could hear the Fred Flintstone little tune in my mind. I kind of, I didn't know what to say.
How old was the baby?
It's just not even 3. And so I'm sure that, no, probably not 3. And I thought, well, what do you, and I started to write, and then I started this little book called "Is There Something on My Face?" It's melanin. So it really,
I mean, but that goes with the theory, like, you just know your own. And when you see something different, I don't necessarily buy that's why the child, I mean, there might have, unless there's something that's happening in the family and the parents are literally speaking against Blacks, for example. Right?
but the point is, Lori, that why is mom mentioning that?
That's my point. That's what I was going to say.
Right.
So why is she even mentioning it? So there's something is being said so that if that was the reason, then it's the parents potentially that are part of that, right? And for generations, right? I mean, who knows? Maybe the kid saw something behind you that scared the boy or the girl.
And the systemic part of it is, if mom is saying that, challenge my own sensibilities and recognize that every white person is a part of the large project of systemic racism. That child has an opportunity to become a part of that systemic movement.
Which, to the white system or
the white system of supremacy.
Right.
Mom is feeling
that child understands those words by that age.
That is really interesting.
And positioning you, which is what I was about to also say, is positioning you as other. But she's positioning it as equal. Oh, it's because he hasn't been socialized. Whose fault is that?
Well, and the fact that it comes out of her mouth, so it's coming from somewhere. And if that,
I mean, no disrespect from. That's why I'm saying I can speak to this, and I don't want to go picking people that are racialized as others. That will be my friend, so I can show off, right? It has to. I'm blessed in that, for over 30 years I've been working in this work, so I meet people all the time, right?
Yeah.
I've lived in communities that are mixed for years, right? Until I started living in places that cost a little more, and it's like I actually asked my real estate agent. I said, I want a mixed neighborhood, and she just looked at me. She said, nobody's ever asked her that, because I didn't want to live in just a white neighborhood. I have no problem with living in a white neighborhood, and I want it to be real. I want to share. That's what I know, right? But those are the kinds of questions you have to. But I'm not at that level. But the higher you go on bridal path, I mean, I don't know. I think that there are some people, people of color, on bridal path, but I'm sure like 90% are white. And if I wanted to live there, then I couldn't.
You mentioned something that's interesting. It's very telling as well. It comes to this other point that I'm going to read of yours. When the child, may have seen something, or it's not maybe probably used to. That's a normal thing. You're used to being with your own. You haven't seen, Black people or whatever. That's great. But let me tell you, this next point here, once white people become informed about racism and whiteness, then we have the opportunity to take an informed sense of responsibility for our part in the larger structural issues. And those kids are our tomorrows.
Yes.
So when people are watching your children, though, you may be saying certain things in the home, you may be watching certain things, because this is how whiteness permeated and assimilated us, besides the masses whip. It, as we continue into the 21st century, is that when I came here, even the television back in Barbados, it's predominantly, you are seeing that white is right. Here I go again. Brown stick around, black get back. You are seeing that it's best for me to dye this blonde, even though maybe I should get some blue eyes, color my skin, which I'm not even going to laugh about, which is a horrible thing that kills people. So I'm going to use lightener because I have, people say, why are they doing that? That's not a surface thing.
Yeah, that's the horizontal and sorry, horizontal and vertical oppression. It starts with the vertical and the horizontal, like the shadism, for example, in communities of color, right, is a result of the vertical oppression. If you buy into that theory.
So let's unpack this a little bit more. Once white people become informed about racism and whiteness, then we have the opportunity to take an informed sense of responsibility for our part in the larger structural issues. So what does that look like, and how might they go about that, as far as you see?
Well, there's many. It's part of what we're going to discuss today, developing a critical consciousness, using critical self-reflection, that kind of thing. But in terms of, can you read it again? Because I had two things going on in my head.
No problem. I love it. Once white people become informed about racism and whiteness, then we have the opportunity to take an informed sense of responsibility for our part in the larger structural issues. Like I just mentioned, what about your children? They're not, I'm not saying you got to force them to watch, so the BET, the Black Entertainment Station, but
yeah,
right.
In real life, one example for me is that I, aside from the space piece, but it does kind of on a systemic level intersect with individual. So what I'm about to say, whenever, especially once I got deeper into, becoming I was a diversity consultant for a number of years, and then I was a trainer and so on and so forth. And what I would ask myself is, am I taking up space? Should I even apply for this job? So for example, if the whole team, if we're talking about whiteness, if the whole team is white and now they're asking for a director, right? I won't even apply for that job, because that to me, obviously I would do my research, because just because you could present as white doesn't mean that you necessarily are. So it's more complicated than that. But I'm saying, let's say it's like Eurocentric white, the whole team is, and they're taking on, they're in the leadership, there's 10 people. That's not the space. So it's not just bodies, and it's also analysis. If the analysis is very Eurocentric and doing lip service, I do my research, right? And if it's lip service and it's all people who are saying we're doing the right thing, we believe in this, but you don't see any representation, for example, right? Well, we're trying, and it's like at one point in an organization that I worked in, it was 80% white, right? The woman part was taken care of in terms of the power piece, but all the other locations that even in the law, we weren't even close, right? So I'll ask in the community, right? I'll do my research about the job. Like, is this for real? Do they really mean it? So even if there's representation from, say, the Black community or any community, it doesn't matter. Is this for real? Or are they still buying into the Eurocentric agenda, and it's just about the Eurocentric agenda, and maybe it's just window dressing? I understand that I'm exaggerating, but these are the situations. And the jobs that I have gone into, I've really, especially when I worked full time, or even now when in contracts, there are deal breakers for me. There are just certain places where I don't want to take up more white space.
Is everybody listening? I'm well, okay, subscribe first if you want to leave.
And I'm not saying I succeed, right? Because I will take up space just by virtue of being white, but then you keep self-checking, self-interrogating, and coming to a place of critical consciousness.
Wow. I love that. Awareness, that speaks to what we were talking about. We've been chatting a lot, Lori and I, that awareness and action thing. So it's like, for sure, people are okay. Yeah, no, we're trying to do this. We're having the webinars, and we're having right. But what does it really look like tangibly? So remember how I say to people, I'm very conscious about what restaurants I go to now that I'm aware. Okay,
Yeah.
it might not give us the capital, but it might help pay wages for me to go down to the street to Simone's up in here in Danforth and making a plug for Simone's and get me some oxtail. It's going to help if I have to make a ratio. In my mind, I do this, right? How many times am I eating across over there with the Greek restaurant, which I love the Greek food. But practical things that say, what if you're out here and you consider yourself, if you consider yourself part of the dominant group, or you don't like that word or you like that word, doesn't matter. I'm talking about what happened the 300 years that certain groups had a head start. Many other groups were back here with us, but the classification is a horrible place to be down here, right? White, you're right. Brown, stick around, black, get back. That whole thing. And you might be thinking, it didn't affect me. Well, think about it. This is where the discomfort is. Think about that hard, right? As to how automatically I have a number, I hate to call it out, but it's real. And they know that's how I feel. Like they don't want to go. They may not be comfortable. It's too spicy. I can't go to your restaurant because it's too spicy. Will you buy the books? Will you take the time even? Lori and I have talked about this to find a Black author, and read his book. You love reading. I just pick the books I like. Well, if being aware, right? That conscious awareness where you're actually joining a webinar, you're doing something, you're out here just not doing the, where you're tangibly, you have this awareness in action. Now you're thinking, oh, wow. Okay, yeah, maybe I can look for a Black author. What's wrong with that? Like if people really are talking about doing the work. What do you think, Lori? Am I tripping?
You're right on. Like I just thought, my friend has given me permission to say this if she's ever identified, but when I met her, she had a very specific, she came from her specific culture. I won't name it. And she's white and she speaks to that. And I like yourself, have traveled and have, I eat whatever's given me and I don't have any allergies or anything. So there's no health issues. Right. And she actually said to me, she said, because she trusted me, she decided to eat curry. I was so shocked. I assumed everybody ate curry, right?
Well, that's your many experience.
She said, Lori, I used to be a food racist, but now, like, you've opened up my world. I've opened up your world. Like I'm a white woman, right? But it's just because I've been exposed in a different way.
Yeah.
She felt that there's no way that she could ever like something like that.
Yes. No, it's true. I love that. Food racist. I know a couple. But you know what? Honestly, and no, I have my biases too, and I'm working on certain,
Maybe that's not a good example. I've taken it too far, but it's her terminology. She said,
I think that's interesting.
Out of her comfort zone to eat something different. Now, if she couldn't eat curry, that's a whole different thing. If it doesn't agree with her or whatever.
Absolutely.
I'll take it so I can eat it.
Oh, absolutely. I'll say to a friend of mine, look, come and have a salad. Do what you like plantain? Whatever. Some nice fried plantain. But I'm making light. But honestly, this is exactly what my training is about. This is what Lori also does. And it works. We are sympathetic. And there's nothing that we're very similar, no matter we're nations of people. And the discomfort of this work, people feel discomfort all the time with this work. And even when I do trainings and there's people people turn off their cameras until they're ready. Some people never turn off their camera. That might not mean anything to you. But sometimes people will speak and there's complete silence because there's this dominance that kind of shows up sometimes when people can't receive some things. It's not me that said it. I'm giving them W.B. Du Bois, James Baldwin, I'm giving Francis Cress Welsing, Neely Fuller, Dr. Neely Fuller. There's a lot of my people, my elders that speak to this. But I notice also, even with this, that people would rather go to secondhand nations to find out about us,
Sorry, explain that.
Well, in terms of, the people I just mentioned to you. So people will go to white people and their research about us instead of coming to us.
Absolutely.
And because the framework is, you couldn't possibly be mean be as intelligent, you know. When we got some scholastic monsters out here, some
Yeah,
brothers,
absolutely.
sisters too. And I just think that this work, once white people become informed about racism, just really informed of what it looks like, not leave the attitude for a second. You can take it back up if you want after, but leave the attitude in terms of what really is going on. Why should I get uncomfortable? Because we are human beings and it's uncomfortable to look at ourselves. It was uncomfortable for me to look at the fact that I presented so white. What's wrong with that? Love me some white. But it's not who I am, you see. So if I'm identifying or as, and this is debatable because there's a whole bunch of people that identifying with a whole lot of things out here. But when I'm thinking of my ethnicity, my nation, you know, my culture and what that looks like, and I am lost unless I find out who I am, who my people are. So what that might not mean this, some people, it may be better that they divorce their people because they've been through some horrible things, perhaps. I have no idea, Lori, but I know for many of us, it is important, and especially my people that have come across the trade descendants of into the 21st century, it was important for us to go back and look at those ma'afas to identify with something we were told to forget.
Yeah, it's in the very first podcast when we talked about Duran and the soul wound and the different books that he and his wife, I believe, or partner wrote. It's how many of his white students, he has a lot of white students, professor, he's an Indigenous elder and a psychologist, and they wanted to learn about various nations. He said, yeah, that's nice, but you know, that's important, and go back to your roots. So when you just said the piece around, you know, maybe people have experienced dysfunction in their own families, I don't know if that's the word you use, but something like that right now.
To that, yeah.
Yeah, or discord or whatever, but that one family is not the whole culture, right? There's a history, right? And
True.
there's in terms of Eurocentricity, I don't buy into any of that dominant stuff, right? And there are beautiful things in my heritage, right? My specific heritage, like the collectivity, and you know, I was kind of, those are some of the pieces that I, you know, was brought up with, like some of them were freedom fighters and so on.
Yes.
Culture, right? And it's just like patriarchy. It's not pleasant for women to experience it, but and at the same time, it plays itself across every culture globally, right? Except it plays itself out in different ways in different cultures. So in all of our cultures, we've both got the shadow and the light and the beauty, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But it's important to do that deep, you know, work so that we're not constantly staying in that Eurocentricity or that whiteness in this, right?
Well, you know, you are a peculiar people, Lori, because you have been exposed. I mean, I know some backstories I won't share with the audience that Lori has shared with me, but I think because of your experiences, that has caused, and when you speak of pain, your pain, and we got into that a little bit more off the show, I think that makes a difference. Can you explain that a little bit? Like, why does pain cause people, if they allow it, to initiate some kind of healing? Why does that help? Why does that help people to identify?
I think healing in general, depending on how you define it, spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally, relationally, collectively, politically, and so on. We could go on for hours just naming the different categories, right?
Right.
And the victim archetype is one of the, inner predisposition, right? Or it's a pattern in society. So rescuer, victim, martyr, there's positive ones and negative ones or whatever. And Carolyn Mace talks about the underbelly of hero is victim, right? But the victim archetype is the hardest. I'm sort of asking your question more from a place of head right now, but the victim archetype is one of the hardest things to let go of if you've been victimized, right? And then you start repeating those patterns, right? So when you think of people like Eli Weiss, is that his name? And he wrote The Meaning of Life. His family died in the camps, concentration camps, and he gave moments of how people with almost nothing, they were sharing their bread, but they were starving. And this is in the concentration camps, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you conceptualize that, right? And you
Absolutely.
asked me the question of, like, I didn't think that staying in a place of pain or being in a place of victim, I was always searching. I wanted to feel better. But as I started on my healing path and being influenced by various elders and, both spiritual and non, um, if you even look at it from a psychological perspective, you can choose post-traumatic growth. You can grow from that. You can say, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to do that. And I'm not saying I don't want to be you, because I am you. Because if
Mhm,
you reject your seed, you reject yourself.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
I'm part of that seed. So how can I clear out that, which is the internalized part? How can I clear out that, yeah, I have anger or whatever, and I can use that to separate myself from what I don't want and the impetus for change. But if I stay there, I'm going to cave in. And I'm not talking go so transcendent that, I'm just in the sky and I'm not seeing what's going on in front of me. I wanted transcendent descendants. Andrew Harvey talks about that, where I go in and I do my work, but I also transcend the pain. So that's part of what informs me not wanting to repeat those patterns.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I remember the first time, Lori, that when I started delving into this work, I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Like, it's almost like one day I went, Sandra, you're black. Oh my God. And honestly,
Yeah.
that sounds silly in a way, but
No,
it's
it's not.
really like
This
you're
is,
white.
yeah.
It's just now some of my friends that are white acquaintances are going, wait a minute. Oh, right. I don't have to think about that when I walk in a room or I walk down the street. I can go anywhere I want. I don't have to think.
Yeah.
A friend of mine said, why do we always have to leave pieces of ourselves at the door? Like, we're leaving pieces everywhere because that piece doesn't fit in here now. Because so we, and I thought that was an amazing thing to say. But I remember doing this work, and one day, oh, Lori, I get emotional thinking about it. And I was looking at what they did to our little babies in slavery. I won't even get into it because we'll go somewhere else, and I can't go there right now. But I started to look at what they did to our children,
Mm-hmm.
and I remembered thinking, oh my gosh, that could have been my auntie, or that could have been my great somebody. And I paused the research and I wept. And I wept and I was bawling like a baby. And it was the first time that I ever really did that work. I didn't even think I needed to.
Yeah.
Just pull up your bootstraps and move on. Well, that's not true. That's a lie. So when we're here now and we look back and we go back into the time warp 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, and you're really looking and then you put the pieces together, not looking because you want somebody, look at you, you're racist. No, because you want healing as a human being. And then you move further and you want that other person to get healing like a human being. You want your Korean brothers and sisters, indigenous peoples in relationship to each other. Then things start to happen.
Yeah.
But I remembered looking at my people. And I hope you do that with your people, Black, white, Korean, indigenous. What happened to you? And why in relationship is it so important for us?
Yeah. That was powerful.
Okay, take up space. We talked about this because Lori is very conscious about taking up space. I love it. I'm free.
You've got like 1 minute. Last minute is yours.
I love it. And please, everybody out there, I'd love you to go to Amazon and pick up Catrice Jackson's book. It's called Weapons of Whiteness. Catrice Jackson, she's amazing. Catrice Jackson, Weapons of Whiteness. I know. And I'm telling you, my white friends and brethren, you might not be able to handle it, but try. Get uncomfortable. It's going to help. I promise. Not everybody can take her. Even I, assimilated whiteness, have a hard time. But her work is great. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, Lori, let's move on and touch this other piece. Love it.
Oh, I thought we only had 1 minute left. Am I wrong?
How did we get here?
That's what I just said.
I was late, but it was only 7 minutes or so. Oh my goodness. Okay.
I'm always going to be wrong.
I'm ready to roll. Okay. Okay, girl. So you got to send me that link after so we can decompress.
Okay,
Oh my goodness. So, okay. This was great. We're going to put a little commercial in. Thank you for reminding me of the time. We've got somebody backstage doing this for us and stuff. And she's got a life too. So we got to get out of here. But thank you guys. You guys have been amazing, amazing. Subscribe. Okay. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Here's a commercial. Humanity, we need to hear your voices. We need to hear your voices. I will also attach some information for Lori, of course, when we kick this out. And I would really love you to get in touch with us. Appreciate that. Get in touch with me about the show. Wonderful opportunity today. Remember, it's not your fault or mine, but together we can do something about it. Lori will be back. We're grateful for you. God bless you. Have a blessed weekend.
Bye.
For now.
Bye.